Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Complaint Free Life. And with you, your host, Asal Monovan. So, today, it's going to be one of those a bit difficult, I don't know, state of being because I went to the airport today early morning at 4:30, 4:45 to send my partner to Ukraine. And as we know that this is where all the tragedies, or many of the, I shouldn't say all, but this is one of the places where so many tragic stories are happening. And sending my partner off to that place was not an easy thing to do because he's part of a humanitarian mission to help people. So yeah, so it's one of those days that is not easy. At the same time, we know that this is important, and we want to do our part. So that's why I will be, um, I will not be probably doing it from a very joyful and ecstatic state of mind that I usually am when I'm recording, but maybe I'm more from a bit of a, yeah, you will feel probably a bit of my sadness in my voice. And I decided to do this anyway because I want to continue working on things and bringing solutions to people's lives, even in times that are difficult. So this is where I am. Anyway, so the today's topic that I wanted to talk about was the topic of playing safe, or the other way I'm imagining it is when our inner police is active all the time. And the reason why I want to show different perspectives for you to think about is just think about how you might be affected by it, but you haven't really thought about it before. So my job is to bring awareness to what you might be doing and what you could be doing about it if you don't really like what you're doing, right? So that's why you probably also heard about this topic in so many different ways, and I will try to maybe bring some new perspectives that you haven't thought about it as well. So playing safe, when I talk about this topic, think of the following questions for you to consider um, when you have time. So one of them is obviously, have you decided not to go for something that you really wanted because of fear, or because of not being able to do that, or because of believing that you can't really do that and therefore you didn't go for it, or because of other people fearing to lose their disapproval, fearing to lose their approval of you, right? So you didn't go. Or another way is, have you really convinced yourself that this is not a good idea to do, even though you are desiring to do something and you did it because of fear? So the way that I want to define playing safe is basically not pursuing or ignoring a desire or a goal because of fear of not being able to do it. Essentially, a fear fueling these actions, and therefore we are trying to stay safe, or we are trying to stay in the realm of known, or realm of what we have built so far. Another way I want to offer a definition, maybe you could also think about for yourself, is playing safe is when you're not really trusting yourself and instead trusting your fear. When you're not trusting your inner freedom, but you're trusting your fear, right? And another way of looking at it, that definition that I thought maybe it could be useful for you to think about as well, is playing safe is when we are not really living our truth. We're just living someone else's truth that we think should be there. Or another way of looking at it is, and this is maybe a more radical way of looking at it, which is lying to ourselves in the name of comfort or in the name of known, instead of telling our truth and living it. So I've given you obviously so many different ways of looking at things, and you should absolutely decide for yourself what would be your definition of playing safe, and how do you know when you are playing safe, right? So that's important. And the way that I was imagining different scenarios of how we could be doing it, and me including as well, that I think I used to be an expert in playing safe, and starting from childhood, and even now, certain areas of my life where I see that I play safe instead of really saying what I really want to say in those moments. But I'm working on it. So it's a work in progress. But I just realized also that how much of playing safe continues to perpetuate that fear instead of really accessing that inner freedom. Right. So my goal is really for all of us in the world, whoever is working on themselves, to be accessing that inner freedom most of the time, if not all of the time. So that's why I see that a lot of actions that we do, so playing safe is obviously an action, and it's an action fueled by fear, right? And the fear is coming from a particular thought or belief that we believe to be true, of I shouldn't be doing this, or I should be doing this, I shouldn't say this, or whatever else. And then therefore we are fearing, which is then resulting in us playing safe and not really saying our truth. Now, the way that you could find out how you're doing, I will give you some of the examples that I could come up with that my clients have been talking about, but this is obviously not the exhaustive list. So you could ask yourself a lot of questions of how you find out whether you are playing safe or not by looking at what is fueling your actions, right? What is fueling your action, meaning what feeling is fueling your action? Because I know that we tend to label feelings as positive and negative, right? So positive could be something that we like feeling, and the negative is something that we don't really like feeling. And some of that, like fear, could be often labeled as negative. But I'm coming to realize that feelings, if we label them positive or negative, we tend to avoid the negative ones automatically because our brains are like, no, we're not feeling that, right? So that's why, like I am now feeling this sadness, and if I labeled it as bad thing, then I wouldn't want to feel it, and then I would just want to avoid it and do other things, which obviously I do not want to do, because I am experiencing this sad occasion, and therefore I want to actually feel it and go through this instead of avoiding, right? So that's why instead of labeling positive or negative, I have decided to label it feelings fueled by fear or feelings fueled by freedom. Anyway, the reason why I'm saying it is because just for you to recognize or realize how you could understand whether what you're doing is really because you're wanting to do it, or because you're trying to adjust yourself or playing safe, and therefore you're just not going for what is important to you, or not really living the truth that you're really wanting. So these are the examples that I have been coming across in my own life and in the lives of my clients. So you can see whether it relates to you as well. So one of the examples obviously is not setting yourself high goals that you think would be high for you, even though you may want to do it, but you don't do it because you feel like it's not going to work, or you may fail, or others may not approve, you may not approve if you don't fail, or you're not supposed to want this, and therefore you just don't set yourself this high goals, and they stay hidden within you, right? So ask yourself, what are the hidden goals that you might be having that you haven't really brought forward to the surface, to outside, because of fearing all these things, because of fearing yourself and your approval or disapproval, right? And because of fearing others' opinions about it, or because you fearing shame, you fearing something else, and therefore not setting it. So whenever we are not setting high goals, we are again playing safe and playing small, sometimes people say, right? And we're not really unpacking our full potential of what we could be doing. The other thing, obviously, the other example could be not doing things that you would like to do, again, fearing others' opinions. So it's similar to the previous one. Another one could be not saying what you really want to say because of fear, or because of fear of upsetting others, right? Another one that you may not really notice, but this might be also happening, is where you just keep yourself busy or distracting yourself instead of actually pursuing what you want. Because if you believe that if you are busy and you just want to be doing something else, you just, excuse me, just don't pay attention to actually what's going on within you and what you really want to do, then you will just ignore it and everything will be fine. But this might be also another signal of you playing safe. The other one that we also may not really recognize, but it might be happening, which is feeling you telling yourself that you should just be grateful for what you have and you shouldn't really be wanting anything else, right? You already have all the things that you want. Why would you want something else, or why would you go for other goals that you want? And the other ones obviously are maybe more obvious, like wanting a promotion, but fearing what if you don't really able to perform that job you want to, or wanting a grand life, but fearing that it will destroy everything else that you have, so therefore you wouldn't be risking that. Or you wanting a totally different job, but fearing that you will not make it or you will not find it. Or wanting a relationship that but fearing what if it will not go the way you want to, or you're not going to be able to create that type of relationship that you want. And the other example could be that wanting to convince yourself that you should just stay where you are instead of going for what you really want, right? So I've just given you some of the examples of how you might be doing it. And as I said, if you want to know, or if you want to understand for yourself, then look at your actions of what you're taking now, currently, especially the ones that you don't really like, but you're doing it anyway, and see what is fueling you. In other words, what is behind those actions? What is the feeling that's driving you to take those actions or not take those actions, and what you want to do about it? Now, let's imagine that you've understood or you've realized for yourself that these are the actions that you have been taking, but you didn't really want to because of fear. Now, what are we going to do? Right? So that's always the question that we want to ask yourself. And one of the best ways that I suggest that we do is we coach ourselves, or you get a coaching. So if you were to coach yourself about it, right, within your own body, within your own thoughts, without really talking to anyone else, because it's safe that you can just do that within yourself, then you could be really looking at questioning, for instance, you could really start questioning, what if you really chose freedom over fear? In other words, even if you had fear of doing something, saying something and all this stuff, but you did it anyway. You chose to choose the freedom of saying it or doing it the way you wanted. What do you think would happen? Go for the worst case scenarios, like I always say, right? And then once you go to the worst case scenarios, then ask yourself, is it worse? Keep playing safe in order for that consequence, in order to avoid that consequence. For instance, let's say that you really want to be saying something in the relationship, but you really don't want to because you fear that that will destroy your relationship. Now, ask yourself, if the relationship or maintaining relationship really depends on you playing safe, is it really worth building that relationship? You may have your own answer. I'm not saying you should choose one or the other, but decide for yourself and see, what are you choosing over what, right? Because whenever we're choosing something, meaning if we're choosing playing safe, we're also losing something. If we're choosing to play safe, we're choosing, or we're depriving ourselves of the opportunities, or we're depriving ourselves of living the truth. We're depriving ourselves to live it exactly the way that we want to, or telling ourselves the truth, right? Because maybe also we don't want to be saying this because of particular reasons that we have, and not really because we are fearing. But we just want to be clear about it, of what are the reasons why we are deciding to say things, what are the feelings behind it, and whether we're okay with it. So if we instead chose trusting ourselves, and if instead of trusting fear, if we chose to trust ourselves and our inner freedom, what would be the consequences of it? And what will be the consequences for ourselves? What will be the consequences for other people? But oftentimes we really focus on what will be the consequences for others. We don't really focus what is the consequences for ourselves, right? So let me see. Another one is that we often don't really set high goals because of failure, right? So if we are wanting to go and set high goals, but you're fearing failure, ask yourself, is that a good reason not to set high goals? Is that a good reason to hide? Is that a good reason to be lying to yourself? Is that a good reason to be convincing you for other way around, or staying where you are? Like one of my amazing coaches that I love listening to is Jody Moore, and she says that failing is data. It's not good, it's not bad, it's data. We need to know so that we learn what to do next. So therefore, failing is not the end. It's a continuous action that we fail, we succeed, we fail, we succeed. That's how we go. And as long as we keep working on it, we will keep gathering data. But it doesn't mean that we should stop if we don't want to. Another one could be that you are playing safe because of disapproval of people. Now imagine the worst case scenario: people hated you for you pursuing your goal. There is the hatred, there is you pursuing your goal. Is this hatred worth you stopping all these goals and staying safe and playing safe and not really living your truth, or not really honoring your truth and your desires because of this feeling that you think they have or they told you they have. Because I think we're realizing more and more that if people love us, they will understand. And if they hate us for our choices, then it's good to know again. It's good to know with whom we are having a relationship with, and then also decide what to do with that. Instead of just avoiding their hatred or finding out their hatred and then just putting everything under the rug. Right? So that's why, my dears, I want you to be basically questioning, is it worth not following what we really want? Is it not really wanting what we want in the name of this and this and this? Is it worth it? What would be the worst case scenario, and go for the worst case scenario? And then ask yourself, can you handle it? And probably the answer is yes. And if you could handle it, then how would you show up now? What are the small steps you can start practicing where you actually tell the truth of what you're thinking, what you're feeling? Small steps. We don't have to start with big things. We can just start with small things, like saying to someone what we really are thinking and believing or feeling in relation to what we're discussing. Even if we think that other person will be offended, but at least we want to tell our truth. We're not saying it in order to offend the other person. We're saying it just to show that this is our truth of how we are feeling, how we're thinking, for the sake of clarifying, for the sake of discussing things, for the sake of understanding each other, right? If we want to start doing little things like this, we understand and notice what a relief it is, how proud we are of saying it, how proud of we honoring our desires. And then we start thinking, okay, what else I could do? How else I could look at my actions and see whether I'm really trusting myself, my inner freedom, or I'm just trusting my fear and not doing anything about it. And what do I want to do? Right? How do I want to live my life? Am I living my life, or do I want to live my life fueled by fear, or do I want to live my life fueled by freedom? Both are available to us. Both have consequences. Which consequences do I like? Which consequences I want to handle, and I want to be living that fullest life? Because if we rely on that inner freedom, we will open ourselves up to bigger possibilities, bigger opportunities. We grow that way. We challenge ourselves that way. We learn ourselves that way. And we make our dreams come true of living life the way we really want to. Honest, truthful life that we think is what we really want, and go for it. So, my dears, if you want to get coaching on this topic of how to stop playing small, you let me know, and we will get you coaching and get you realizing where are you playing safe and small, and how can we gradually stop it over you choosing to trust yourself and choosing to trust your inner freedom. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.